Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA analyst and reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another episode. On today's show, I am thrilled to be joined by Mike Garcia of LakersDraft.Substack. This has become an annual tradition, one of my favorite episodes. And last time I had Mike on was when I announced I was leaving The Athletic. So I will always remember that episode. It has been a year since then. Mike, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's crazy how time flies, but it's time to talk some draft. And you gave me a homework assignment. You gave me some names to look into. So I've put in my would say hours of watching film, but I try to watch 15, 20 minutes of film on each guy and read different breakdowns and mock drafts and whatnot. So I think I can at least hold a conversation with you as we talk through some of these guys. But first, I want to go back in time here. And I know some Laker fans are not going to want to relive some of the recent drafts that LA has had, but I do want to go back to the Jalen Hood-Schifino pick in 2023 and the Dalton Knecht pick in 2024. For nearly a decade there, they had as close to a perfect draft record as you could have. And you look at all the hits they had late first round, early second round, even undrafted guys from the G League. Like it was hit after hit after hit with a couple misses sprinkled in there. But that decade was as impressive as it gets. But then recently, last couple of years, it has not been as sharp. So what's been your big takeaway here over the last couple of years, and what can LA learn from those draft blunders?
I think they're two different cases altogether. Specifically with Jalen Hood-Schifino, I mean, I remember that particular draft year, I wanted Pajemski. He's the one that stood out to me. And with Jalen Hood-Schifino, he came out of Montfort High School, but he was a shooting guard who was learning the point guard spot, and that's what happened in Indiana. And usually one of those things is if you have to ask if a player is a point guard, he's probably not. Like, that's not what comes natural to that player.
I like that.
So when we were watching the tape on him, he was showing some of those point guard things. Oh, he's throwing the skip pass. He's running the pick and roll. And one of the things I've learned through the draft process for years is trying to look at players at when they do improvisational things. It's really difficult to kind of define. But it's like, oh, this player sees a hard hedge on a pick and roll. He does exactly this thing every time. Or if there's a drop coverage happening, like he'll pull up exactly from 15 feet every time. And the thing that I didn't like about JHS was I felt that sense of predictability. I know he had a big game against Purdue when Zach Edey was on the team. I think he had over 40 points back then. But when you rewatch the tape, it's like, oh, I've seen that shot maybe 3 or 4 times already, and you're just hitting it tonight, right? Oh, I've seen how you attack this in the same exact way, and I know exactly what you're doing. And it feels like they're playing within a box, and they don't have the confidence to expand beyond that. And it kind of speaks to their level of skill and talent and how much more development and confidence they may actually need as a player. So that's for GHS. And then specifically for Dalton Knecht, I think it was one of those things where the Lakers did their homework for guys expected in their range, and then Knecht just happened to fall. And I don't recall him being interviewed or worked out or anything like that from the Lakers. So it's one of those things where, oh, well, this guy's falling into our lap. Should we take the risk or should we stick to one of our guys? And it's really hard to get intel within those 2 or 3 minutes on draft day when the pick comes up. Like, who's going to give you the information that you need to tell you if it's the right pick or not? So they decided to take that risk, and I mean, I'm kind of okay with the Lakers taking the risk as long as they're appropriate ones. Last year, I hinted at Adu Thiero multiple times throughout your draft pod, and the risk back then was, oh, there's a knee injury, but look at what he can do. And I don't recall if there was an interview or anything like that, but the tape really stood out. And even in his few minutes of playing time throughout South Bay and the Lakers, he pops. He'll get a rebound. He gets a dunk within 5 minutes. Just he's doing multiple things. He may not be too clear or too disciplined as to what he's doing, but he's trying to be helpful to the team. And, that's the kind of thing I'm looking forward to. So those are a couple lessons that I've gotten from those two players specifically. So when it comes to this draft, I didn't really see like a whole workout list. I don't know who's being interviewed. I'm only guessing at who's going to be available for the Lakers. And this draft is different compared to all the other ones I've come across.
To me, if I had to summarize it, in hindsight's 2020, right? So it's easy to do this after we've seen how their careers have panned out, at least up to this point. I think there was some processing and confidence issues between the two, and more so with DK post the trade, the Knicks trade, where it gets reversed with him going to Charlotte. He just, in my opinion, has not been the same player, has not had the same level of confidence. And then I think has really struggled with his processing on both sides of the ball, offensively, forgetting plays that JJ's running for him coming out of timeouts, to say nothing of his defensive limitations. And then with JHS, just wasn't quite able to put it together in the limited time he was a Laker. So I think if I'm LA, basketball IQ and processing and some of those intangibles that you're talking about in terms of how you read situations and just how you see the floor, I think those are things that they really need to focus on moving forward and learn from those last couple of picks. But speaking of that, the Lakers hired Tony Bennett earlier in the year to be a draft advisor to Rob Pelinka. As of right now, we are recording this Wednesday night. The Lakers have not hired their second assistant GM yet, and that is the assistant GM that is supposed to be in charge of the draft and scouting and development. It's a pretty important position to not have in place with less than a week before the draft, but here the Lakers are. They're still rebuilding their scouting department, so that's another element to all this. So we don't have the full list of all the workout participants. We don't have the full context of who they're bringing in and that person's sensibilities and what the scouting department's sensibilities will be now that they've undergone some changes. But with at least what we know about Tony Bennett, how would you say his basketball sensibilities will influence how the Lakers approach this number 25 pick?
I think the day he got hired, it was actually said on the press release, he was looking specifically for high IQ, high skill, and high character players. And that's actually a really kind of tough filter to actually go through, because if you look at, say, 100 players, well, who's going to pass all three? And you might only get 20 players on that list, sometimes 10. So hopefully one of those players lands to a Lakers spot. I think there's actually quite a few of them that actually do for this particular draft. But if that's the filter, I'm kind of not really skeptical, but slightly concerned that if there's a player that, for example, if I see someone more talented that happens to slip, not so much of the Dalton Connect mold, but someone that I regard highly that somewhat passes the filters but has a very clear talent, I'm not sure if that risk is going to be taken. And that's different from the Lakers of the past, where Andrew Bynum was considered a very high-risk pick. And it took a few years to develop, and he had a knee injury coming out of high school. He had a lot to go through, but then he turned out into, hey, starting caliber 5 on a championship team, and maybe he ended up on the bench for a little bit, depending on the lineup. But the kind of player that you got out of that became worth the pick, and it was worth the development time. So I'm hoping there's an eye out for that level of talent while being mindful of this particular lens as well.
There's a couple guys that we're going to get to that I think check that box of talent and potential and just raw athleticism that you might want to take a gamble on and bet on. But yeah, so I mean, I guess what I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying, you think the Lakers are going to play it maybe a little safer, maybe a junior or a senior, a guy in that 21, 22 age range that checks the boxes of high character, high basketball IQ, high intangibles, and not necessarily going for more of the raw athlete type?
I mean, it kind of depends on how you view the draft. I usually look through the lens of trying to ignore the age aspect, because high IQ can still come out of an 18 or 19-year-old, and it's just very tough for that kind of player to slip this far down into the draft at the 25th pick. But if that player does come through, I mean, my eye is likely on that player. Would I want that player? Absolutely. It just so happens that with the NIL and the salaries being as incredibly high as I think that they are, a lot of players have chosen to stay. There are quite a lot of players that I liked in the draft before players started withdrawing. I think probably 5 to 10 guys that all decided to go back to school, and I was like, oh, it's not as cheap as I thought it would be, and they would pass through the filter as well. So yes, they might be playing it a little bit safer, but in this particular case, with a focus on just building talent onto the team and getting a sense of what they're looking for, hopefully with processing, that'll be really clear with certain players too. It's a really good filter to actually look through.
What's your top line takeaway with this draft? Like, if you had to summarize just this draft overall in a couple sentences, how would you describe it?
Talented and deep. I've never seen
that's good for the number 25 pick, right?
I've never seen a draft where, I mean, this is my impression of it. If we look at historical drafts of, say, the past 10 to 20 years, there are basically 4 hypothetical number 1 levels of talent. And then into the lottery, there's probably 5 point guards that are all lottery level. At least I would argue that. And then later into the first round, once you get past, I don't know, pick 18, pick 19, all of a sudden there's a large amount there's a variety of big men of varying skills, whether it's stretch or defensive oriented or high motor, whatever else it might be. But the tiers of talent is really big. So it's like if you're picking from, let's say, pick 19 to arguably pick 33 or 34, all of that is still arguably the same kind of talent tier. And then the rest is kind of conditional. Oh, this player is more athletic. That's kind of what we're looking for. Fill in the blank. Oh, we're looking for a high IQ guy. Okay, maybe this is our guy instead. But the same kind of talent for that kind of tier, I mean, that's really impressive for any kind of draft class.
So it sounds like you feel like the depth goes into at least the early second round of that caliber of late to mid to late first round type talent goes into at least the second round, which I think bodes well for the Lakers. So do you feel like they can find a rotation level guy that we're having this conversation in February of next year, and there's a guy in their top 9 or 10 of the rotation that they picked at number 25 potentially?
There's one guy that I strongly believe should be a rotation player, only because his best trait is processing and IQ. And the way
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it for a couple of weeks, but the way he actually plays on the floor, he's disciplined with how he reacts to the ball and what to do on the court, and it's very clean and very decisive. And it's like, oh, that guy looks NBA ready, right? And then maybe there's a few other guys that aren't to that level of execution, but do I think that they could get there? Yes. Do I think they have more natural feel and IQ compared to prior draft classes? Yes. So it's just one of those things where the one particular player I'm referring to, okay, maybe I would expect a shift or two, like 10 to 15 minutes. I think that's fair. But the other guys who are also in the late first, early second, maybe they could get a shift. But I don't expect like 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there. I really do expect some sort of contribution, whether it's statistical or just high effort or high discipline. Any one of those things should all be available around the Laker range.
All right. We buried the lead long enough. Let's get into it. Who are some of your favorite draft prospects for the number 25 pick?
I'll start with my favorite. So right now it's Joshua Jefferson. I'm going by the idea that he's definitely going to be there at that pick, and none of the other dream picks that I have in mind are going to slip yet. He's about 6'7" plus, 8'10" and a half standing reach. I kind of go by standing reach, or sorry, 8 and a half standing reach. So about 6'10" plus arms. He's in 253 pounds, kind of an average athlete. He might remind you of, say, Kyle Anderson in terms of like athletic ability, but the way he sees the floor is really hard to teach. I don't think NBA players can just be taught this. He's ran point forward for Iowa State, and he's helped run their offense. He can make passes while driving to the basket. He can make passes out of the post. He can make passes out of delay actions at the top of the key. And then there's even the occasional pass where he'll manipulate the defense with his eyes looking a certain direction and then spots his teammate on a cut and then dish him the basketball. That's all I'm looking for. So he is a triple threat player. The ball handling isn't super dynamic, but it's functional. He can attack the basket. He's got a free throw rate over 50%. He shoots about high 60s, low 70s percentage from the free throw line. He's about mid 30s for his career around the 3-point line. It's not a prolific shooter, but I think it's just passable. But as I've alluded to earlier, the way he executes like an X out or a closeout defensively, or how he just moves the ball along, he does it to man touches in order to make the right decision. I know that we're looking for athletes and lob threats and dynamic defensive players. Look, I want all those things too, but the draft is, like a handed poker. You're just kind of given what you're given, and then you try to make the best of it. And I think he's one of those guys. So that's Joshua Jefferson.
That's the guy that I had in mind when you were talking about the high character, high IQ a bit earlier. I think he checks those boxes, and he's also a bit of an older player in terms of being a senior. So you get that. I think he checks a lot of the boxes of what it seems like Tony Bennett would be advising the Lakers on. To me, he reminds me of San Antonio Spurs era Boris Diaw. I know people make the Kyle Anderson comp, but I see some Boris Diaw in there, and I think that is a pretty enticing player. And when thinking about how he would potentially fit into the Lakers rotation, I'm like, what if you just gave him Jake LaRavia's minutes? And what if he was this connector with the second unit that you could also run some offense through around the elbows, or as a short roll playmaker, and then he is defending the same types of guys that Jake is defending. I think he's probably better at defending like size to even slightly bigger players than Jake is, and Jake's probably better at scaling down. But yeah, I mean, I think that thinking about how he could fit into LA's rotation, I feel like that is a natural opening where as a backup, I think he's more of a 4 than a 3, but as the backup 4, now this is also where we run into what's LA doing with LeBron and Rui, because I think at some point there is some overlap of, I've been making the case recently that if you have LeBron and Luka and Rui all playing at the 4 defensively, you are naturally going to have to play some guys out of position. I think we've seen that a lot with Rui in particular, where he's had to scale down and guard smaller and quicker guys. So I wonder where Jefferson would kind of fit in within just the overall rotation hierarchy, and which types of players he would defend. Like, how do you see him fitting into this specific roster? Let's just say the Lakers run it relatively back. Maybe they upgrade one of the starting spots, but it's like the same general, 8 of the 10 top rotation guys are back, and the bones of the roster is similar. Do you see him fitting in potentially in that Jake LaRavia role? And how do you see him fitting in defensively?
I do see him fitting in that Jake LaRavia role. In fact, that's the first rotation spot I thought of when I came across watching him in the first place. One of the things I look for in a player is, kind of what's their superpower, and his is processing ability, IQ. And when the game gets faster and more physical, he could play up to that level. That's what I would expect, especially around by playoff time, because he's playing ahead of that level at the collegiate level right now. When it comes to defense, I just expect him to kind of understand, like, oh, well, these are my teammates on the floor. My position is maybe I'm guarding the 3 today, and maybe I will get beat. I'll space my guy or defend him appropriately. But when I'm expected to close out and we're rotating, because that's what I'm expecting with these mismatches all along the lineup, I know exactly who to rotate to. I know where the pass is coming from a point guard driving down the floor. I know that, this guy's going to go to the corner. I need to X out because my teammate's going to switch on me. I expect him to execute all of that, and I don't expect a lot of time being spent during the season for him to figure it out. I just kind of expect it, like, he recognizes it. This is what he just does. And just to clean up that level of defensive discipline and execution, I think would go a long way for the Lakers overall.
Who are some of the other guys in this range that you like?
Another one is Zuby Ejiofor. I mean, what I like most about him is he's so switchable on defense. He's a small ball center. He's probably, I think he's 6'7", 3/4, uh, without shoes. He's got his over 7-foot wingspan. His standing reach is 8'11", which I think is just passable. But when I see Coach Reddick implement switching schemes, and I don't see a wealth of, say, switching talent, I would like to see a guy who would be able to do that. One of the, I guess, principles I look forward to in defensive players is knowing what to do and then moving with their feet first, chest second, and then hands last. And that keeps players in front of opposing players, out of foul trouble, contesting shots, just being well defended overall. And Ejiofor does all of that. And it doesn't matter if it's a point guard or a wing or whatever else it might be. He'll do all of those things to just keep up with them. And it's like, okay, great. Well, what else can he do? He's a high motor player. He runs the floor hard. He rebounds. I am a little bit skeptical of what he does in the half court. At St. John's, he operated a little bit as a hub at the elbows and was more of a face-up five. And it's more of, oh, well, I'm 2 dribbles away from the hoop. If I have an advantage, I'm going to take it. Otherwise, I'm just going to try and connect and hopefully find a cutter or set a screen for someone else. And that's kind of what he does within the offense. The 3-point shot is just low 30%. I wouldn't really rely on it just yet. This is where I would hope that the Laker organization, invest into their staff, not just the scouting department, but if there was a shooting coach or two, because there are some really great defenders in this draft that could really use some shooting help. I mean, that would be just maximizing all of their opportunities, and then you could really make Ejiofor a strong two-way player.
His defense really stood out on film. To me, I see some CMB, and you mentioned just the small ball five nature. I think he's a little bit bigger than CMB, if I'm not mistaken. So I think we saw what CMB was able to do in Toronto, and maybe he was closing playoff games for them against the Cavs, and that was impressive for a rookie to do. See a little bit of Draymond in there, just being able to defend up and make plays against bigger guys. But yeah, I mean, I have Jefferson ahead of him on my list of, you sent over 6 guys. He's Jefferson's ahead of him for me, but he is right there behind him for me. Like that, yeah, I have him ahead of a couple of these center options that, to me, I would rather go with the small ball five and the versatility, the switchability, the motor. I mean, he just plays hard all the time. That's something that I think could be a bit of an issue for some of the other guys on this list, we'll say. So I think he checks a lot of the boxes. Also a high IQ player, and I think he would fit into what the Lakers need in a small ball. Like, one guy here, Jefferson, kind of I think could plug and play in like the Laravia role. With Ejiofor, it would be more of a small ball look that the Lakers didn't quite have last season consistently, and you could go to him with LeBron out there or Rui out there or Luke out there or whoever, and I think have a pretty competent defensive front line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I like about him. He brings defense to the forefront. He brings motor to the forefront and a certain athletic ability that isn't really expected out of that position, especially at his given height. I would love for him to be a lob threat. I mean, that's a wish out of mine. But you can't get everything we're picking down in 25, and just for him being a competent connector on offense and a higher end defensive player, I'll definitely go for that.
What about a couple of these center options?
So Henri Veesaar,
we'll say more traditional center options.
Henri Veesaar definitely comes to mind. I can never think of his height. I think he's 7 foot in shoes with a 7'2" wingspan, and he's got a 9'3" standing reach. I've seen a lot of comparisons, or I've heard a lot of comparisons to Maxime Reynaud from last year. Reynaud, I had 17th on my board because I just kind of felt like, oh, he's a stretch five who can rebound really well, and he has good touch, and I think he's going to make a rookie team, and then he just so happened to do that. I think that Veesaar is somewhat of that mold, but I think he's a little bit further behind in terms of feel. I just don't expect immediate impact. He's He's 227 pounds to start, which is kind of already like a flag. But this is after he already gained a lot of weight from beginning of college too. So I don't know if his frame can actually fill up that much more while still retain his level of athleticism. Now, the plus for Veesaar is he's the only center in this general range and tier of talent where he's a rim level lob threat and he's comfortable with that while being a very competent 3-point shooter. So to bring in some stats here, of the 11 2-point field goal attempts that he takes a game from last year for North Carolina, 4 of them were basically at the rim. So it's like, okay, great scorer. Okay. 3 of his shots, so probably 30 to 40% of his total field goal attempts overall, are behind the arc. And they're not just dead ahead shots, they're also at the diagonals. And he steps into his shot and he looks comfortable shooting it. That's kind of how you know, like, oh, maybe he's actually a 3-point threat. The volume isn't what I love it to be, but he's not purely this guy. And he's not purely a lob threat. He has to kind of mix it up a little bit. So that's what I like most. And on top of that, he just has a soft touch. He shoots around 75% from close to range, which really threw me off considering, oh, you're telling me a guy who's 227 pounds, like he's like Lou Dort weight, and then he finishes like that. I think that speaks to a lot about his touch in the paint. And just for North Carolina in general, he operates as a hub, kind of similar to Ejiofor, but he just offers a few more extra options with the scoring ability. The defensive end, I have some concerns. I don't really see him as a hard hedge or a flat hedge or even a soft hedge kind of pick and roll guy. I think he's directly drop coverage. And the thing I've noticed with drop cover fives is they're usually really huge. Like Rudy Gobert speaks for himself, really big guy. Walker Kessler, I can imagine, I'm guessing he's 260, 270 pounds, whatever else, fill in the, like, they have a presence about them that, when they drop, their presence can still be felt defensively. I don't really think Veesaar has that just yet. And I think this is what makes him a little bit of a project. But it's also one of those things where, hey, if we think the frame will fill out in a year or two, even if it's just 10 pounds, and we think the shot is there, and he's got this touch, and he makes decisions in the half court as a connector as well, well, now we can space the floor as a potential option, or we have a lob threat. And if I'm running Spain, I don't know which way I can use him, but I can use him both directions as a screener or as a dive man. So that's what I like out of Veesaar the most. What have you seen out of him that you liked?
I concur with everything you said. I think I've seen a lot of Vucevic comparisons for him, which I don't love because I feel like Vucevic was a bit stronger and more filled out, and to me, he's a much better rebounder. But I think Henry is actually a better rim protector and a little bit more nimble on his feet. So, like, I see the general, especially like later career Vucevic. I can see some of the overlap there, but I think that's sort of just basically comparing him to another stretch five. I see a little, like, I got to be careful with how I frame this, but like, see a little Pau Gasol in there. Maybe we'll say like Spurs, Bulls, Pau Gasol, not Lakers or Grizzlies, Pau Gasol. But offensively, I love the fit. And to your point, I think he can be a lob threat. He can operate out of the post. He can operate around the elbows. He can be pick and roll, pick and pop. He could be a short roll playmaker. He could do just about everything offensively. Really, my only nitpick would be some of his drives and just getting, like, it feels like with physicality, if you have a certain amount of strength or physicality or force, you can bump him off of his drives and he can maybe struggle to finish through contact sometimes. But offensively, he's about as close to what you would want in a modern five, especially in like a non-all-star, high-level starter context. To me, it's the defense and the rebounding. I think the rebounding's solid, but it's not. I think if you're going to get away with being not the best rim protector, you probably need to be a stronger rebounder. Like, I think he has to notably improve in one of those two regards of if he's like a B minus rebounder and he's also like a C plus B minus rim protector. I think he's got to get better in both of those regards. So, or at least one of the two. So I'm a little bit lower on him. I think right now the stretch five position is in vogue and I totally understand it. You look at the three best teams in the NBA right now, New York, San Antonio, and OKC, they all have stretch elements from their bigs. I think you could go back, the last 10 champions have all had stretch elements from either their 4 or their 5. So I think that's an important skill set that the Lakers need to add to the roster. I just think most of those guys have also been at a certain level as rim protectors and overall defenders. And I don't think he's quite at that level. So Henry, to me, is someone that maybe in the regular season can have some utility, but I think he'd easily be played off the floor in the playoffs.
Yeah, my Rolodex goes back really far, all the way back down to childhood. So when I saw Veesaar and I was doing research on him, the player I thought of was actually Vlade Divac. And I remember Vlade early on wouldn't dunk the ball. He would shoot layups and he would get pushed out and rooted out for rebounds. And, you know, he had a great career, but he's not exactly the guy you think of as an anchor. He was just able to do some things before he went to Sacramento, and then we know what kind of defense he played over there. But if it's this idealized version of Veesaar, but this guy dunks and he does, and he's a 3-point threat, and he has some level of passing ability, I would just buy into the idea of that. I'm not the biggest fan of the Vucevic comp either, because the way I remember Vucevic out of USC was he would get the ball in the high post, he would face up, and he would just shoot over guys or kind of muscle guys in the post. And he was a little bit more physical on the block, and then more of a face up, like straight jump shooter from mid range. And then he slowly expanded to the arc. We never really got to see any development in terms of defense or anything like that. So I know he was a rebounder. I know Veesaar is solid, but not great or dominant like we'd like him to be. But just the idea of this multifaceted offensive player at the 5 spot, which is kind of critical, is giving Luka more options and not just, we're going to run pick and roll again. Okay, great. Well, our center is going to dive, right? So that's what I like out of Veesaar. And I'm guessing that the next player you're going to talk about is Tarris Reed Jr.
Yes, quickly, before we move on, do you feel like he can play in 2 big lineups? Because I in some of the analysis that I was reading, some people pitched him as almost like a big 4, and that he's not quite ready to play the 5 full time, especially with the strength and muscle and physicality. Like, could this be a situation where he's almost like, he could be a stretch 5 offensively or more of a stretch 4 offensively, although most 4s now can space at least to some degree. But defensively, you could play him in a 2 big look. And especially if it's in a bench context, he can be hidden a little bit in that way.
I think specifically at the power forward spot, one of the issues that's being highlighted is really the foot speed. Foot speed is just going to be a thing. And
could he play with Jackson? Do you think him and Jackson could play together in some 2 big looks?
So I'm assuming that we're going to guess that Jackson is arguably playing the 4 since he's defending the 4 spot since he's actually got the foot speed, right? At least
I guess so, yeah.
Make sense to me. So situationally, I'll put it that way, because it would help to have that much size in the front court. It would help to have that much balance in the front court with a 12-4 lob threat in Jackson and then an actual 3-point threat at the same time. But I don't really foresee it being a permanent staple for, say, shift a game or anything like that. I am concerned about the foot speed with Veesaar, but at the same time, I'm just a little bit more optimistic on the skills.
Got you. Yes, Reed is next on the agenda here. What's your breakdown of his game?
I mean, the first thing that I thought of was, I think I'm watching Day'Ron Sharpe all over again. It just the resemblance there, and not just yeah. I mean, not just with physique or anything like that. I just think of course, I'm watching UConn, and where's he operating? The high post on the low block. They rebound similarly. I think they rotate defensively in the same way. I'm like, okay, well, this is great. Well, we know who this guy is at the NBA level now. And Day'Ron is the borderline starter, high quality backup where you're not really losing too much as a backup center at all. And perfectly capable of making decisions as a hub. But I think specifically for Tarris Reed, because he played at UConn, he's played a variety of defensive coverages. He's played a variety of offensive sets. And I know we're not all the biggest fans of a UConn head coach, but what he does do for his players is he gives them a full playbook of, you know, this is what we need to do defensively. I need you to hard hedge. I need you to find your screen. I need you to hedge hard at a certain angle in this specific way. And he's done all of that. And then when it comes to offense, he's operated on the low block and the high block, and they found ways to be effective. I mean, sure, UConn has, a great recruiting team as well, and they have a different balance of talent, especially with a particular shooter. But that versatility speaks for a lot of, hey, I could play in these multiple situations, and I can be a positive contributor in all these different faceted ways. The only thing I'm concerned about is it's very traditional in the sense of, oh, we pass it to him on the low block. Do we just kind of watch him create a shot if he has to do it? Because we're not thinking of a potential lob threat. And he is the short roll guy, but is he really the guy that you want taking floaters in the paint, which is kind of weird to watch because I'm so used to him being a postman. And I know he's working on his shooting ability, and I'm lightly optimistic about it. But shooting takes time to figure out. Shooting just takes time to figure out. It doesn't matter what form, how clean it is, or where you are in the development. Stephen Curry started from high school, and then look how long it took for him to be this way in the NBA, right? Blake Griffin was in the middle of his career and had the same shooting coach for years and then became a solid three-point shooter in Detroit, right? Like, it just takes such a long time to have that level of consistency with repetition and whatnot. So I like that he's had the experience of running these defensive coverages and running a variety of offensive sets and being comfortable with it. And I like that he is a rebounder. He does understand how to protect the paint. I like that he's big. I think physicality is something that the Lakers can always get better at. I think we covered the top four guys that I really like at the number 25 pick for sure.
How would you rank those four on your board?
Jefferson is definitely first. Just when I think of that superpower, okay, high IQ. What is the IQ of Ejiofor? Switchable on defense. He's gonna fight when he's playing at center and attack the glass, but when you need it to actually try to get a stop, you can trust him being out there on the floor. When it's Veesaar, it's offensive versatility, or at least the idea of it. We would like it to get better, but it's such a variety of skills that hopefully, a developed version of that gives Luka a lot more options within the offensive set. And then there's Tarris Reed Jr. and his superpower is basically being a classic big man who's just physical, set screens, boxes out, gets the rebound, fair enough rim protector. Like I said, we've seen Day'Ron shot. I still like Day'Ron. So
I like him too.
Telling me, hey, if we're getting a rotation player from the draft and it's like, oh, you got Day'Ron shot, we win. So that's kind of how I see that overall. I'm just a lot more optimistic on Joshua Jefferson.
So you have Jefferson, Ejiofor, Veesaar, and Reed in that order. Is that your order?
Yes.
Okay, we have the same order. I was in between with the last two just because I'm more going by like the prospect themselves, but also trying to factor in what the Lakers need as well. I think from a Lakers perspective, maybe you could argue Reed ahead and swap those two. But yeah, I just think from the Lakers and what they need, if you are committing to Luka and Austin long term, and this is the foundation, these are two of your top 3 or 4 players moving forward, I think everyone else needs to check a certain level defensively. And that's where, to me, Jefferson and Ejiofor, like, they are the two guys who I have the most confidence in their defense translating to the NBA level. And then they obviously have other skills that I really like, especially with Jefferson. I think he's the most versatile and well-rounded of these 4 guys. But I think you need to check a certain box defensively and have a certain competence level. And then if you don't, that's where I think it's more borderline for me. Because I think Veesaar is the one that everyone's been projecting to the Lakers, and like most mock drafts, I would say 6 or 7 out of 10 mock drafts I see are Lakers are picking him. So I get the stretch 5. I wouldn't mind him. I would prefer a couple of these other guys. What about, you had a couple of higher upside say raw guys who should be gone by pick number 25, but could potentially be there depending on how things unfold. And maybe there's some an injury concern with one of these guys, or maybe one of these guys is a little bit too raw and you're not quite sure what his position is. Talk to me about Quaintance and Cenac.
So, as I've mentioned before, my Rolodex goes far really back. Jayden Quaintance, I think he's just 18 or 19 years old still, even though he's 2 years into college level. He tore his ACL last year. He played 4 games, and he only really looked like himself for one, and it was specifically against Ejiofor. And when you're watching that game, or if you've watched that game, you can see Quaintance facing up Ejiofor, who's already I think he's a Big East player, defensive player team, like first team or second team. He's that level of defender. Quaintance just drives him all the way to the basket, gets whatever shot he wants. Not just one drive, 2 drives, 3 drives, and he powers him all the way to the hoop every single time. Now, I'm not optimistic about Quaintance's offense. The special part about him is his defense. We talked earlier about Zuby Ejiofor's special superpower being, this guy can switch defensively. Well, imagine Quaintance, who's a couple years younger, who has that level of switchability on defense, but is just so much stronger. It looks like he can anchor as a defensive center. And these player measurements are turning into a blur for me now. But, at roughly 6'10", probably 7'1", 7'2" wingspan, he's probably 250, 260 pounds. He's built really, really strong. I don't know how else to say that he plays more physical than his size suggests, because Tarris Reed, I think, was like 263. He plays stronger than that somehow. I don't know how else to phrase it. My Rolodex can think of Orlando Magic, kind of Ben Wallace. That's how far back it goes, where it's that level of strength. Ben Wallace on the Orlando Magic was 8 to 9 rebounds a game, 1 to 2 blocks, 20 minutes, didn't really get into too much foul trouble, didn't have any shooting range, but he was just a possession getter and a positive defender for Orlando. And it's like, that's a great outcome. We all eventually found out what Ben Wallace would end up being. I don't think anybody foresaw that coming. But if Quaintance could just be that Orlando Magic level, that's a pretty primetime defender in the first place. And he just has a natural instinct of, when he defends pick and roll, you can run all the defensive coverages. You can switch, you can hard hedge, you can trap, you can, flatten, all of the above. And he even does the cat and mouse game where he's even running backwards and he'll stab at the basketball and he'll pressure the ball handler pretty good to the point of almost forcing turnovers. And it's like, you have this kind of athletic ability. There's not a lot of centers that actually do. And if you're harassing, ball handlers at this size, then we expect you to, push point guards back, not have them attack us. We're going to attack them defensively, and that's kind of his special superpower.
I love his game. He was by far my favorite guy on film. I would take it even in through a contemporary lens. To me, I see a ton of Robert Williams III. I see the best version of Robert Williams III, and similarly, there's injury concerns with him coming off of the ACL and just how his game is going to just how his physicality and body is going to hold up, all that stuff. I think there's some Robert Williams comparisons with that as well. But I just was if you squint and I'm that's Robert Williams. I see the bet, and I could see his career going a similar way where it'll depend on how healthy he can be. But on a per minute, per possession basis, Robert Williams is a monster on both sides of the ball in terms of being a lob threat, his finishing, his rim field goal percentage, and then also rim protection, rebounding, his defensive versatility, all those things. I see Quaintance checking all those boxes. Some people compared him to Mitchell Robinson. I don't see that one as much. Robinson's a little bigger. That's where with Williams, I think they're pretty similar in size and length. And I think Williams has better mobility than at least the current version of Mitchell Robinson. But Ben Wallace in Orlando, I love that comp. That's a great one. But yeah, he's the one to me that I don't think he's going to be available for LA at number 25, but I would take him in a heartbeat over any of these guys.
If he was healthy, he's easily a top 10 pick, and teams would take the risk with his offensive ability. He doesn't really have touch, including, he struggles to finish layups sometimes, doesn't really have any shooting range. He can't really shoot free throws, but the defensive ability is worth it. He has that much of an effect on that end of the floor.
And he started to space out a little bit. And that's also another Williams component here where I think Williams started to hit the corner threes. Like, I don't think he's there yet, but I wonder if that's an area that he could add to his game at some point. Then what about Chris Cenac Jr.?
So Chris Cenac, I'm lower than consensus, kind of across the board, and I see what's enticing. He played for a great program.
I'm enticed.
Over at Houston. Look, 7'5" arms. I think he's 6'9", 6'10" without shoes, 9'1" standing reach. I think he's around 240, 250 pounds. He has all of the athletic ability. As we mentioned earlier, when it comes to hard hedging, pick and roll coverages, he's shown flashes of being a real actual rim protector. But in the footage that I've come across, I find that there's a processing issue and a physicality issue, and that's my biggest concern. And I've thought about this in terms of what role can these players actually play if this is a potential issue, and what is the way around it? And for me, my answer is having a player with motor who's just trying to have a positive effect on the basketball floor. Like, for me, Theo just checks that box, right? Like, I don't know if he's going to attack a closeout in a certain way, but he is going to rebound, and I know he's going to finish in transition, and those are really consistent things. When it's Cenac, it's, isn't he going to, push the guy off the block a little bit harder? Why is he settling for a 17-footer when I know he can just attack the defender? He's bigger than, and he has the skill to actually get to the hoop. And I haven't really seen a player comp about Chris Cenac, but the player I think of is Bobby Portis, which throws me off because I've seen college footage from Bobby Portis, and he wasn't even the shooter that he is today, that he's known for. He was more of a post player and then developed the range. Well, I'm watching freshman Cenac already kind of taking those shots, and they're not the most effective shots. And I think, well, if you really, really simplify his role, and he only had to make 2 decisions a game, what angle do I pick on this guy, and how high do you want to throw the lob so I can actually go get it? Then yes, it would be a great pick. But this is a different NBA than 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and processing speed actually matters. I can picture Joshua Jefferson finding himself in a particular situation, and then it's baseline cut from Theo, and he throws a lob, and it's instantaneous. And that's not even their thing, but I know he can make that, or I trust him to be able to do it. When it's Cenac, it's, I need you to set a pick on this guy at this angle. Okay, I'm still waiting for it. Okay, did you do it? Okay, great. Well, now the clock is already at 7. Maybe it's at 5. The game is just faster even within the half court. And that's my hesitance with Chris Cenac overall.
The Bobby Portis comp is interesting. He was the one guy I couldn't really come up with a comp for as I was thinking more about it. I see a little Christian Wood in his game, which is maybe not a good thing. I don't know if that's someone you ought to be compared to necessarily, though obviously there was a time where he was a prolific scorer and rebounder. With the Bobby Portis comp, the only difference I would see, I think Bobby Portis to me is a tougher, more physical player, and then Cenac is more just raw kind of athlete. I think he's a little bit bigger than Portis, but yeah, he's like, to me, I see, trying to think about it through the Lakers lens, I think there's a version of him where he's just eating off of Luka and Austin. And one thing I'm working on right now is a center target list for the Lakers this offseason, and looking at Jackson and DA versus the rest of the group, and potential trade targets, potential free agent targets. And Jackson and DA have the highest rim field goal percentage of any of the guys I'm looking at. And the reason is because Luka and Austin and LeBron are spoon feeding them very high percentage looks. And I think for most centers that have a certain catch radius and finishing ability, you are just going to look at a certain level playing off of that level of playmaking. So he's a guy that I do wonder, to your point, like if you can simplify things, you can maybe unlock the best version of him. I don't love the shot selection. I don't love some of the face up contested fadeaways. And that's where I see some of the Christian Wood in his game. But if he can develop I also see some of the stretch big capabilities. Like if he can develop into a league average 3-point shooter, refine his shot selection and decision making, and the Lakers find a way to get through to him and like get the best version of him, the raw talent and physical tools are there. We're also lining up several ifs there that there's no guarantee any of them hit.
Yeah. One of the things I've learned about kind of draft history in general is, can you teach physicality to a player? And the answer is actually yes. And then, can you teach motor to a player? No. Can you teach IQ to a player? Not really. Like, it's really difficult to do. So, when I think of physicality, I remember Brandon Ingram, when he first got drafted by the Lakers, he would attack the basket and everybody would just like attack his body every single time. And it took a while for him to just kind of deal with like contact drills before games and after games and all this other stuff. And now, of course, now he's a mid-range master, but at least when he attacks the basket nowadays, he still uses his 7'3", 7'4" wingspan to get all the way to the cup. I can imagine Cenac having that kind of trajectory with development, at least with physicality. And then the second part is, hey, this is what we do. We run pick and roll. When you see this, I need to screen this angle. When you see this, I need you to do this angle. When this happens and you're on the short roll, the defense is coming one of two ways. This is how I need you. You know what I mean? There's a lot of facets to that just within a basic pick and roll play. And we know how Luka gets actually covered. So I don't really see him as like, hey, here's the short roll passer who makes quick decisions and he hits the open man in the corner kind of thing. Like, to me, that kind of decision is really instantaneous. For me, it's like, okay, well, he got the ball in the middle of the floor after Luka got trapped. What do we do? So maybe he just kicks it out to another guard, proceeds down the line, whatever else it might be.
Or shoots it.
Yeah. But when it comes to being a lob threat and doing the athletic things on the floor, whether it's defense or on offense, I know he has all of those abilities. That's what I like about his game the most. It's just, hey, can you consistently be the threat, or can you do this like once every 5 plays? Because if I think that you're going to be a lob threat 10 out of 10 times every time down the floor because you know how to set a screen, oh yeah, just draft him. And I don't have to worry about it because I know this is what you do. I don't really know what his signature is on either end of the floor. So his superpower is the physical tools and a motor. And can the Lakers extract the most out of that to make him a very positive player on both ends of the floor?
Yeah, his maybe scoring out of the dunker spot, that might be his superpower. I don't know. So how would you rank these 6 guys overall on your board?
Okay, let's assume that everybody's healthy. Quaintance is easily at the top, and then skip a tier or two, then Jefferson. Then I think I mentioned Ejiofor, then Veesaar, then Reed, and then I kind of have Cenac last. I mean, this is entirely based on that processing ability. One of the things that stood out to me in the playoffs is the physicality, but not just physicality. It's how well were you processing while dealing with the physicality? Some players get rattled and they don't make good decisions when they're being pushed around or, being bumped against, and they don't know what the next best thing to do actually is. And some other players can just move the ball along and just execute the next part of within the half court. That's what I expect out of Jefferson, and then a lesser extent Ejiofor and even Veesaar. But I mean, I've never seen physicality wrap up at the playoffs to that level, and I know that's the goal that the Lakers want to play at. So, in my mind, it's if we're keeping this guy, what can he do at that level? And if he's not there yet, can we develop him there? With Jefferson, it's like, oh, we just have to develop his shooting touch, right? Like, if he's that threat and all of a sudden he's a 38% guy and he just takes the set shot in the corners and he's perfectly fine, I mean, that's a really easy development curve. And then you have this mature player on the floor you never have to worry about. So those are my current rankings for sure.
All right. We pretty much were in agreement. I did have Cenac second, but you are talking me out of that ranking. I mean, that might be the way it ends up going, where someone takes a gamble on him and he ends up being like somewhere in that 18 to 22 range or something like that. But I mean, he's clearly the one who's the biggest project here, where I think if in terms of confidence of like day one stepping into a rotation and making an impact, I think I would have him sixth out of these six guys. I just think if he can hit his ceiling, he probably has the second highest ceiling. But again, that is a giant if that there's no guarantee he gets close to. Is there a situation here where, I mean, you just talked about your tiers and your order with these guys? Like if the Lakers are there, I think Quaintance is the one that almost certainly will be gone by number 25, barring some new development with his medicals or something that really scares teams off. But if 4 or 5 of the remaining guys are available at number 25, is it as simple as just take Jefferson and then move forward? Or is it potentially trading back into like seeing if you can get a second or a player from one of the teams later in the first round, or even going into the early second round? And now you have a little bit more flexibility with the contract structure that you sign the player to, and you could save a little bit of money. And is there a possibility there in your eyes to trade back? Or if it's those guys are available, you just go with the guy that you think is the best fit, and unless someone blows you away with an incredible offer to trade back, you just draft at 25.
This actually ties in with how the Lakers go about their offseason plan. They may not see this incoming rookie as, oh, we need this guy to contribute immediately. We trust the veterans that we have, and we expect to re-sign, guys 5 through 9. And if that's the case, you can take a chance on Cenac, and maybe things really work out, right? Or you can take a chance on Quaintance, and maybe the health finally starts sorting itself out, and then you get a more dominant guy year 2, year 3 down the line. As a draft guy, it's more along the lines of, if your guy is there and you like him, just get him. Because the worst part is, oh no, Denver got Jefferson. Oh, Jefferson is going to be the backup to Gordon. And then now they're playing next to Jokic. That's a problem I don't want to deal with that passing ability and that size in that front line. I want that advantage, right? And I don't want Denver to be like, oh, well, we're just going to make him a 40% shooter because that's what we do with all of our players anyway. And they did it with Christian Braun. And so, it really just depends on the offseason. If you like your guy, go get him. If you have the intel to recognize, hey, Jefferson's going to be at 32, and we're really confident that this guy's going to New York, this guy's going to Denver, this guy's to whatever team, then that's a risk that, I'm not getting paid for this job. I just really enjoy this, but that's an ownership thing. That's a GM thing. That's a dual assistant GM thing. They need to assess that risk and then take it from there. But I would just be like, no, I'm getting Jefferson. We're good. I know what we have, and I know what we can do going forward. And if players get hurt, I can rely on this guy, and I know what he does. And we could even expand upon that on both ends of the floor. So,
is there a guy that you would trade up for? I assume Quaintance might be a candidate here, but if the number 16 pick becomes available, or the number 19 pick, or the number 22 pick, if there is a team come draft day that just doesn't like how the draft is played out, or has a material change in their plans, and all of a sudden there is some pick in that 16 to 24 range that does become available and you can potentially trade up, how would you feel about that? And who would you target?
Let me start with the targets. Everyone who follows me on X or Twitter knows that I'm a big Morez Johnson Jr. fan. He's one of the top 3 guys from Michigan. The reason why I like him so much is because he's basically a 6'10", 7'2", 7'3" wingspan, super high motor, 250-pound granite wall of, center power forward. And he gives the impression that he can be a stretch 5, and he can do versatile defensive coverages. And he's kind of okay at being a rim protector, but I think I would be okay too if I had Ade Mara behind me and he's 7 foot a billion. So if that was the guy that fell down to the Lakers, that's the guy I would take, and I would trade for him depending on who was available, of course. Um, and then another guy I would trade for would be Cameron Carr out of Baylor. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch him. He's
A
a
little
guard.
bit.
He's 6'4", 7 foot arms. He's only 175 pounds. It makes me feel bad about my weight. But even though he's light, he really is that top tier athlete. I, I've mentioned before, my fever dream is to have everybody else outside of Luca be a lob threat. And it's hard to get that out of the shooting guard spot. And one of the guys I liked went back to school. Cameron Carr is basically the only guy remaining. And he's a really good contested 3-point shooter. He's really athletic in transition. I mean, he fills that athleticism box very easily. I just think he'll be pushed out around a little bit. But I don't think he shies away from being physical. I just think his body can't compete against that just yet. But if you can just keep up athletically, defensively, and try and hit your threes and be a lob threat within the half court, especially in transition, like this would be a great guard trio, or you could even play 3 guards with Luca, AR, and now you've got this super athletic wing. And if you really want to go and play fast, and hopefully Thero can actually get there and he's healthy, put Thero at 4. Now we've got a really fast front line, and Luca's got his wide receivers, and then we just play transition offense instead of half court offense, and everything is great. So those are the 2 guys I would actually go for between Cameron Carr and Morris Johnson Jr.
And then how would you evaluate this pick in terms of a draft asset? So the Lakers have up to 3 tradable first round picks this summer. They could trade this pick, draft on behalf of someone and trade the pick to that team. They could also trade either the 2031 and or 2033 pick. Could technically throw in 2032 as well, but can't combine that with the other 2. So this pick, 2031, 2033, obviously 2031 and 33 are far out in the future. We're talking about 5 years out and 7 years out. And we now have these new draft and lottery reform changes that have changed the value of picks to some degree and flattening the odds. And we just don't know where the Lakers are going to be at the beginning of the 2030s. But it sounds like you really like this draft class, and the Lakers at 25 are still in that sweet spot of finding a rotation level player who could be a long-term piece. But if you had to assess those draft assets, like would you put this ahead of those picks? Would you put this behind those picks? Like how would you analyze that?
I would only put the 2026 pick ahead of the future first rounders. And I would put them ahead, or put this particular year ahead, only because it's the deepest draft class I've ever seen. I've never really seen first round, like where if I laid out a best player available list and thought of how many first rounders I could put in order and see what number it ends up at. I think the number ends at 25. The thing is, all these NBA teams have different draft philosophies. They're looking for reach or athleticism. They like Chris Cenac because he can do all these athletic things. And then that's a guy I would have second round. They would just pick him ahead of the Lakers, and then another guy drops. And then there's going to be a couple more cases of that where it's like, oh, well, now we think we have 4 first round available guys that are worth a guaranteed contract. And the pool is deep, and we have our pick of choice. Who do we like? Is Jefferson there? No. Is Ejiofor there? Okay, well, that's our guard. Are we good about it? And then you have that quick conference, and then you make the call. So that's how I would see that. I understand the probabilities of the flattening odds for the future picks potentially helping the Lakers, but one of the things I'm aware of is the NIL contracts being so high, where I've seen it where a projected late first rounder out of Baylor would get an NIL contract that's basically equivalent to a top 10 pick this year. And if you're a college player, it's really hard to turn that money down because you're getting it in 1 year, not over the course of 3. So unless the rules change by the time it's the 2030s, I can only imagine that, if the Lakers happen to land in the late first again, that it's going to be more seniors, and maybe the depth of the draft starts staying in college a little bit longer than you would like them to. So that's one of the things I would just kind of be aware of in terms of the value of this pick compared to the future picks.
And then final one, and this I guess technically could apply to some of the names that we discussed earlier, but who are some of your favorite second round prospects in terms of guys like picks 31 to 45? And again, some of these guys might slip and maybe they're available, and you could purchase a second round pick if one of these guys drops to 34, 37, whatever. But outside of these six, or the last 4 of the 6, who are some other guys you like in that potential 31 to 45 range?
I'll just mention 3 guys. The first one I'm going to mention is Ugata Onyenso. He played for Virginia last year. He had, I think, a 9-block game against Duke. What I liked specifically when they played against each other is he was directly assigned to Cam Boozer. And even though they were in the post, and Onyenso was only 235 pounds, straight up wall defense on the block, couldn't really get moved. And then when Boozer tried to create a shot around him, blocked, because his block rate is 17%. And he may be a little bit older of a player, and he's a rim level long threat, and he doesn't really have much skill kind of like as an offensive player in terms of passing or anything else. But one of the things I'm trying to look for is the Dylan Cardwell of this draft. Like the Kings have Cardwell, really valuable guy. I think he was an undrafted free agent last year, and he can close games because he's that much of a rim protector. I think Onyenso can be this actual guy because his block rate is not only really high, so that's like getting 6 blocks a game, and then the foul rate isn't high. It's like 3 fouls per 40. I mean, that's a great outcome. And the way that he blocks the shots isn't really, oh, here's the arc of the shot, I'm going to get it at the top of the arc. No, he gets it right off the fingertips or just off the hand, so everything gets swatted low, which tends to lead to a change of actual possession instead of just giving the ball back to the opponent all over again. So that's one. I know he's working on his range. It's 27%, something like that. I don't really trust it just yet, but good guy to look after as a defensive player. Second guy I like is Trayvon Brazil. I think he tore his ACL during his sophomore year. But just to make a quick player comparison, think of Obi Toppin, right? So Obi Toppin, 12th floor lob threat, a possibility of shooting threes, and can really run the floor in transition. These are all the things that Brazil does best. The motor can sometimes be a little bit iffy, which is kind of fine. He's a solid rebounder, not great. But you mentioned the possibility of using dual big lineups. I think you could put Brazil at power forward because he is that athletic. He can keep up laterally. He has the foot speed defensively. And he's a 34, 35% three-point threat. And it's been that percentage for several years in a row. And he is also a lob threat again. So it's that dual threat concept. So I really like him. Let me just check my notes because I think you saw them earlier. I have way too many. So 6'9.5" without shoes. It's going to end up 6'11" with shoes. And then 7'3 3/4" wingspan with a 9'1" standing reach. That's basically center height, center length. He's just 225 pounds. So think of kind of like Jackson Hayes like size or kind of build. He's kind of light, but he can do all these things. I think he's one of those sneaky finishers that could potentially be a steal. And I mean, I like a lot of guys in the second round, but one guy that's really stood out is, I don't know if you've seen him. His name is Bruce Thornton. He's out of Ohio State. He's a 6-foot point guard. He's got 6'6" arms. What you'll like is his shooting ability. He doesn't really have much vertical, but his close twos are 75%. His far two shooting range is 57%. His three-point shooting is 40%. The most dominant shot in his chart is actually the far two. So imagine your far two shooting percentage is 57% anyway. He's a low 80s free throw shooter.
That's incredible, yeah.
These are kind of really absurd numbers for indicating touch. If I were to make a player comparison, it's I don't know if you can think of Bryce Sensabaugh in Utah, where he kind of has that that one dribble, two dribble drill, ISO drill, pull up shot along the perimeter. That's kind of what Thornton does, except he's a running back. Like he's 6 foot, but he's 225 pounds. and he has a high free throw rate because you can't really dislodge him. So if he doesn't have a lot of blow by speed, but if he gets the position on the defender, like he's just not going to get knocked. And then when it comes to defense, like point of attack defense is going to be a little bit awkward because he's not the quickest guy laterally. He's just carrying so much bulk. But when it comes to, say, weak side defense in anticipating a pass it to the interior, he could read that and then swipe at the hands, and he's gotten pretty good at that. So he's this kind of like fire hydrant point guard with shooting touch. And maybe he's not the greatest ISO guy, but if you could get him an open shot, there's a very high probability he's going to make it. And he's going to make himself an effective offensive player. Really low turnovers. He's just an okay passer, nothing crazy. But that's kind of what you're looking for in a role player or even a bench player, just a guy who can make shots, right? So those are the three guys I can think of off the top of my head. I could totally add so many more, but, the Lakers only going to buy so many second-round picks, and I wish they bought all of them.
Yeah, I think it'll be one at most if it ends up happening. But Mike, I appreciate the time. I will link your Substack in the show notes below. Anything else you want me to plug before we get out of here?
Sure. If I look a little bit tired, it's because I was helping edit the Substack of Istok Franco today from Diggin' Basketball. So that's what I was doing this morning. So
Friend of the show.
Yeah. So we talked about the same Laker players as well. He brought up several stats and player comparisons along with Fit as well. So if you want to go ahead and read that, feel free to do so. Otherwise, you can find me at Canyon Driver on X or Twitter. I call it Twitter still. And that's the draft.
It'll always be Twitter.
Exactly.
Awesome, man. Well, we'll have to connect with you after the draft and maybe after Summer League and just see where the Lakers are at that point. But I appreciate you and appreciate your time. I appreciate all of you for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, or leave a 5-star review. I'll be back on Friday with a live Q&A. I will talk to you all then.